Hey, how's it going everyone? In today's video we're going to create a drop-down widgets tab which is going to contain a couple of widgets. Now we're going to use HTML, CSS and a bit of JavaScript in it, and I'm also going to combine Bootstrap, but I'm just going to use a couple of things from Bootstrap, so nothing fancy in it, and Font Awesome for icons. So let me just show you first of all the project, and then we're going to go through each and every step. Okay, so this is the project. We're basically going to have up here a navigation or menu bar, which is going to display the time and date, which is actually the time right now and the date right now. We're also going to have a little battery button here, not going to do anything, but we're going to have here a ellipsis on the right side, which if we click it, the widgets drop down menu is going to, well, drop down. In here, we're going to have a couple of tabs. If we hover over each and every tab, it's going to change its opacity, and we can also interact with each and every button and also with the sliders. Okay, and at the last one is going to be this music player. So basically this is it. This is the project. We're also going to have this cool glass effect for the widgets tab. And this is nothing fancy, but I think it's a pretty cool project for you to have in your portfolio. So I thought, let's just drop it in there. Okay guys, so that's the project. Hope you will enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, then please give a thumbs up to this video right now and help me with the YouTube algorithm. Also help this channel grow. So with this being said, let's just jump into the project. Now let me just drag this to the right side and make this a bit larger. So I just have Visual Studio Code open. I created a folder. And let's start up by creating, hey, don't have anything open, no worries. We're just going to drag and drop in the folder. This is going to be the distribution code. I always have my code in source code and distribution code for you guys and girls. Actually, I have 20% women on my channel, so whoa, welcome all you ladies. Okay, so let's start up by creating our index.html file. Within here, we're going to create a boilerplate. Then, oh, by the way, the entire code is down in the description below, so you can just download it and follow along if you wish. If you wish to code along, you could also download it and check it later for errors. So if you get stuck anywhere, I have timestamp within the video, so just move around the video as you wish. Okay, right in here, we're going to link up our CSS. Style.css, which I still need to create, so let's go ahead and create it. Link style.css and our, let's call it main.js file. Boom, that's all we need. Okay, let's move back in here, and right before the body I'm going to script include our main.js script. Next up, let's include our Font Awesome CDN. So I'm going to search for Font Awesome and CDN actually. Okay, this is the site, but I need the CDN. Font Awesome CDN, there we go. So you want to go to cdnjs.com. Again, this is down in the description below. /library/font awesome, okay? And you need to grab onto the link, so not the URL, but copy link tag. And we're going to paste it. Let's paste it in before our CSS. And let's also go to Bootstrap. And let's grab on to the CDN for Bootstrap. Let's click on Get Started. This should be the CDN. Let's scroll to the end of it. I'm just going to copy it. Right click, copy, and paste it in here. And we should have everything set up. Okay, now before we do anything, let's just do a quick project overview. So we're going to do our project setup, which is this one. Then we're going to create our menu bar, which I just showed you here. So this is going to be the menu bar. After that, we're going to hide and show and hide the widgets tab. So we're going to give this button using JavaScript some kind of functionality. By using a click event, so far and so on. It's pretty easy stuff. We're also going to explain everything. Then we're going to actually create the widgets tab. We're going to create the connectivity widgets, which is this one. Then we're going to create the night mode widgets. Then the keyboard, airdrop display, then the display, the sound, and the song play. And at the end, I'm going to make all of these buttons clickable. Actually, these are just icons. And actually, these are just icons. And using JavaScript, we're going to, well, toggle a couple of classes. So let's get started. And let's move back into our project. And we could actually open this up using live server. So right click, open with live server. By the way, if you want to see all my extensions that I have installed, I do have a complete Visual Studio Code guide for beginners in which I'm actually showing you the most useful extensions that you can have in Visual Studio Code. One of them is obviously live server. Okay, so we have our project here. Let's just give it a quick title down here, body, H1 widgets. Okay, so just check if this is working. Let's start creating our menu bar. First things first, I'm going to wrap everything into a main tag with a class of container. Now this is a bootstrap class, so it's going to automatically give me a couple of widths and margins and just some basic styling. I don't want to style each and every small step because I'm actually taking just up time from this project. So the container class is just a basic bootstrap 5 class. It's just going to give me a couple of margins and paddings and actually take out all of the margins and paddings. As you can see in our finished website, we don't have any kind of margins or paddings. And this is thanks to Bootstrap, and it's also going to give me an automatic font. You could obviously go to Font Awesome and use, not Font Awesome, to Google Fonts and choose a different font, but I'm going to go with a regular font from Bootstrap. Okay, now within here, we're going to create our menu. So let's make sure type in your comment to do. Menu bar. Let's go under it. And within our main, we're going to create a menu tag, and it's going to have a menu class. Within the class, we're going to have a span tag with a ID. I'm actually going to give this a ID of date time because I'm going to grab onto this later on in JavaScript. So date, a ID of date time, and boom, there we go. Why do I have an ID of ID? Oh yeah, because I typed in ID after the hash. Sorry about that, my bad. Next up, let's include our icons, and as you saw in our finished project, we need our berry and our ellipsis. So you can either go to Font Awesome and search for icons, and let's just search for battery, and we're going to actually chose this one. Let's click on it. This is going to open up our icon. I'm going to just click on it. It's going to copy the HTML and paste it in here, and that's it. We should have our berry. There we go. There's our berry. Now the next one is actually going to type in using ms, so I for icon, then the class of FAS, then FA-ellipsis, ellipsis, and -h for horizontal, and there we go, we have our ellipsis. Okay, now let's move on to CSS. I'm going to give the body a linear gradient, so we're going to target the background, so not background color, because it doesn't work in background color. You need background, and for the background I'm going to give it a linear gradient. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and then we're going to give it two colors. I'm going to use hash of A164. It's going to be a pinkish color, E6, and then we're going to have three colors. So this second one will be hash 3E46A0, and the last one is going to be hash 043862. Okay, let's hit save, and there we go, there's our color. Okay, so we have basically one color here, one color here, and one color here, and they are rotated so they're on the horizontal with 90 degrees. Now let's grab onto the menu class, and we're going to automatically give it a width of 465 pixels. We're going to give it also a padding of 0.1 to top and bottom, and 1 rem left and right. Now everything that is within the menu is going to be displayed first of all as flex. I'm going to use display flex. This will align the items automatically in a row, and now I can use justify content on them with space between. This will give me even space between my three contents. Now the left one we can't see right now, so why don't we jump into JavaScript and let's add the date and time. And this is pretty simple. We're just going to create a variable called widget called, let's say, date time. Let's just use dt instead of writing everything out. We're going to assign this to date object, so new date object, and now we're going to grab onto the datetime ID that we created right here. So datetime ID. Now you could either use query selector or get element by ID as you wish. I'm going to use get element by ID. It's more obvious when I'm using IDs. Paste this in, and I'm going to change its inner HTML. I'm going to assign it to the DT. We're also going to use the to local string on it, which is actually operator. So we need to have string, put in close parentheses, and there we go. There's our date and there's our time right now. And if you wish to have this updating, then you can do it. Actually, I have a countdown timer on my YouTube channel, so you can check it out if you wish to update this each and every second. Okay, now let's move on to our icon. So let's go back to CSS and let's grab on from the menu. So I'm specifically targeting now within the menu class the icon tags, because the rest of the icons are going to style a bit differently. So first of all, let's change the background color. So BG for background color, and let's set them to transparent. Now the color of the items themselves I'm going to set to #DDD, which is just a bit darker white color. And then I'm going to give them a padding of, which is actually all around padding of 0.4 rem. And when I'm hovering over them, let's just say that we're going to have a cursor pointer. So if I'm over an icon tag, I'm going to have that click event. Now, when I'm activating, so let's target the menu icon tags again. And actually I'm going to use here the active pseudo class. And this just means that when I'm clicking on them, something should happen. And I'm going to change the background color now to a hash of E9, and 80. Basically what this means, I'm going to have a bit of an opacity. Okay, so always when I click on them, they're going to have a bit of an opacity. Now let's move back up to our menu. I'm actually going to copy this background color and change this 80 to a 20, and there we go. We're going to have a opaque background color. Now let's change the height. Let's assign the height of the menu bar to 30 pixels. Let's change the color of the text to also #DDD. And let's increase the font weight to 500. Okay. Now I can also see that we have this rounded borders to our edges. So let's use a border radius on it of 15 pixels, and this will trim down the borders or the edges. Okay, and well, that's pretty much it with our menu bar up here. But what I want to do next is actually make this button do something. And for this, we're going to go to JavaScript now. And these are just a couple of lines of code. And I'm actually using here, instead of click events, a onClick. So this is a bit shorter than what I would do usually, but the focus of this project is, well, to make this beautiful and also to write it as at the least code possible. So let's move ahead, and I'm not going to assign it to any variable because I'm not going to use this later on in my code. Normally, please do not do this. Always have your variables assigned clearly at the start of your document when you're writing vanilla JavaScript. So let's move on. Let's do document get, or let's use query selector, and we're going to use the class of fa-ellipsis-h. So actually I'm going to target this class right here. Okay, so this icon, But this icon has a specific class, so I'm going to target this specific class. Now, on this icon, I'm going to add a click event. So on click, this is basically the same thing as using, what can I type? Click, as using add event listener of click. Okay, now we're going to assign it to an anonymous arrow function. And because the function is going to have only one line, I don't need curly brackets, curly braces. And also I will not need any kind of new element, any kind of new variable. So I'm just going to use document, query selector. And well, first of all, we need to create this widget. So let's go down here after menu. And let's say that we're going to create a div with a class of widgets-tab. And that's basically it. Okay, now let's go back to our JavaScript file. And we're going to grab onto this class that we just created. So within quotes, widgets-tab, the class of widgets-tab. And we're going to grab onto its class list. And within this class list, we're going to toggle a class of show hide widgets-tab. So show widgets and tab. Okay, so let's open our console. Let's right click, inspect. Let's go to the console. And now if I would click on this, well, nothing would happen. But let me put this into curly brackets, and let's also add, let's add here another line of console log, let's say log. Okay, so let's just see if this works. I click on it and log appears. Or let's just change it to show. I'm only doing this for showing purposes because we are going to hook this up later on and make our widgets tab appear. But for now, let's just rely on the fact that this line of code works. So in order to see if this line of code works, well, we know that it works here, but in order for us to see if this really works, let's create our widgets tab. So within our class of widgets tab, we're going to first of all give it a title of h with an h6 element, in which we're going to have a class of system. And let's also type in here system. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in here. Now let's go ahead, go to our JavaScript file and grab onto our widgets tab class. Let's move down here. Tab and first of all, let's give it a width of 465 pixels. So exactly the same width as we have for our menu. Let's give it a background color of, well, it's basically the same color as we have up here. I'm just going to copy this. Let's push it down a bit. So I'm going to give it a margin from the top of 2 pixels. No, not 2 pixels, 2 rem. 2 pixels is not enough. Now, the content within it, let's give it an all-around padding of 0.8 rem. Let's also trim down our edges by giving it a border radius of 15 pixels again. And now comes the interesting part. So let's just take a look in our finished project. This right here are different tabs, and I actually used display grid, but something called the grid template areas in order to display this. So if you never use grid template areas, it is amazing for placing objects within a grid. So you'll be quite surprised how easily we can achieve this. Okay, so let's move back to our project. As I said, let's display it as grid. And now I'm going to go shortly back because I want to show you something. You see that we have equal distance between all of our elements, and I didn't use padding or margin for this. I used something called gap. And when you type in just gap, then it's going to create an equal gap on the X and Y axis between each and every element. So I'm going to give them a 8 rem gap, exactly the same as I gave for the padding for the inner elements. Okay, next up we need to define the grid template columns and grid template rows. So we're going to go ahead and create a grid template column first of all. Now we're going to have 4 columns here because I want this two to spread across I want this to spread across 2 columns. Then we have 1 column here and 1 column here. So at the end of the day, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. Each and every column is going to have 100 pixels. So let's go ahead and multiply this, or just type in 4 times 100 pixels. Now, for the rows, I'm actually going to use auto. And now comes the interesting part. So we're going to type in grid, template, and areas. And within grid template areas, we're actually defining for each and every column and row what should be in it. We just didn't want to type in none. Please don't type in none. So the first thing that is going to be in it at the top is going to be the system. So within quotations, I'm going to type in dot system, and actually this should have a capital S, and dot. Basically this means that the system is going to be in the second column, but I'm going to show you how this works. So let me grab onto the column, to the title of system, this right here. I'm going to go into a CSS. I'm going to go down here, say the class of system is going to have the grid area of system, actually with a capital S, system. And as soon as I do this, you see the system just jumped to the right. If I would move it now, delete this dot and add a dot at the end, then it should move it to the second column. Let's hit save. You can see it's now in the second column. If I wish to move it here, I just need to delete this dot, and well, I could add another dot here, or basically it's still seeing that it's the first item within, so it must be in the first column. Now, as you wish, you could also add it on multiple columns. So if I wish to spread the system, I just say I'm going to add dot and delete and copy this system to the next dot and delete the last dot, then it's going to spread here, but still is going to start within our second column. In order to demonstrate this, let me go ahead and select this. So as soon as I go over it, you can see it has 4 columns. So just selected the select tool here, hover over it, and you're going to see 4 columns. If I would replace this with a dot, it's going to be in the 3rd column. Again, hover over it, it's in the 3rd column. Okay, so as I said, pretty cool. So I'm going to add to this as we move along, but at the end, this will be displayed as display none, and it's going to have a transition all of 0.3 seconds and ease. Okay, so if I hit save, it's going to disappear. Boom, it's gone. But I'm going to comment this out right now, and I'm going to create that show widgets-tab class that we targeted within our JavaScript. So let's create show widget-tab, and I'm going to display this as grid. I'm also going to use an animation on it so let's type in animation. Let's go ahead, create our add keyframe. In order to create an animation, we need to use add keyframes. I'm going to call this display widget tab. I'm just going to create a Bayesian drop and fade in animation. So add 0% and at 100%, but let's take care of 0%. So let's transform, translate. I'm going to translate on the y-axis, minus 200 pixels and a opacity of 0. And when we are at 100%, 10, then we're going to be at 0 pixels at its initial position and have an opacity of 1. Okay, so we need to now include our animation up here. It's going to take 0.5 seconds and, have my caps lock on. It's going to take 0.5 seconds and it's going to have an ease in animation. Hey, I said ease in and out, ease in, out. There we go. Okay, now that we have this, we have our class, we have our widgets class, which we targeted. We told that if a event of click happens on this button, now we're going to go back to our console, then we're going to grab onto the widgets tab class, which is this tab, and we're going to toggle the show widgets tab, which is actually displaying it as grid. And now we can go back here, display it as none. Now if we click on the widgets tab, just check something. Now we should basically just click on it, and there we go. There's a widgets tab. And if we click on it again, then it disappears. Okay, so now we can move on and create our next tab, and this will be the connectivity widget, which is this one. And actually, we're going to concentrate most of our energy on this one because after we created one of them, the next are pretty simple. Okay, so let's go into our HTML file and let's type in here comment of create connectivity widget. Okay, I'm going to use sections for them. So each and every widget is going to be in a section. The first section is going to have the class of connectivity. Within it, I'm going to create another class of section container. Let's hit enter. Within it, I'm going to have our icon. So i.fs is going to be again a font awesome icon. Dot for the next class, fa Wi-Fi. And now I'm going to add a couple of my own classes, which we're going to grab on later on in CSS and style them. So con icon. And also for the first one, I'm going to give the class of active icon. Again, the active icon class is just a utility class, which is going to show if the icon is active or not. Let's hit enter, and we should already have FAS, Wi-Fi. Hey, why can't I see my icon? Oh, because we're hidden. Ah, there we go. There's our icon. So there's our Wi-Fi icon, but we're still not done yet. After our icon, I'm going to create another container, which is going to have a class of con type, so container type, which is just going to contain a title with an A6. Let's say this is going to be the Wi-Fi. And after that, we're going to have a small tag with some text of home. Let's say we're on a home network. Okay, let's hit save. And you know what? I'm going to go into CSS and take out this display none. I'm going to comment this one out. I don't want to constantly need to click on this tab in order for it to be shown. Now, that's basically it for the HTML, for our connectivity. Now let's go into CSS, and I'm actually going to go above our underneath our system, because this show widgets tab is the last thing that we need. So I'm going to remain underneath our system, and I'm going to grab onto the connectivity class. And let's also assign it within the grid system. Now, again, we need to assign it a grid area. And I'm just going to assign it the same name as we have for the class, so we know that we're targeting the same thing. Now, for the connectivity, we're going to place it, if you take a look in our finished project, up here on the left side is going to take up 2 columns and also 2 rows. So this means then we need to go up here, create another quotation. We're going to have 2 connectivities, one after another. So connectivity space connectivity. Then going to type in 2 dots. We're going to need them later on. So we'll go to our project. So 2 dots. After that, we're going to have another 2 quotations. Again, connectivity, connectivity, and 2 dots. Okay, now everything is pushed to the right side, but we're going to fix this as soon as we take care of our sections, so our main container. Now, each of these widgets are going to actually have a section tag, so I'm going to only style one tag, and it's going to style all of them. Now, all of them will be displayed as flex, and because this connectivity is the class of this section, you can now use the flex direction of column on it. But you know what? I think I need to move this above the connectivity. Okay, let's go back to our section. Let's change our background color to E9, 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 and 60. I actually forgot to put a space between those two dots, so that's why they were moved out of frame. And also this should be a hash. Okay, so there it is. Now let's give them again a border radius of 15 pixels and a transition of all 0.3 seconds and ease. And this is actually because I want to have a hover effect on our sections. So section, hover, and when we hover over them, the background color is going to change to a E9, 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 and let's say 85. And this should also be a hexadecimal number. Okay, so if I hover over the section, it's going to have a bit of a hover effect to have a much darker color. Let's actually go with 80. Let's see, I think this is much better. Yeah, this is much better. Also, it should have the same transition effect as we had up here. So I have to take 0.3 seconds for when I hover in and when I hover out. Now let's go underneath for connectivity and let's target the section container. So the .sec container class, which is this class right here. We're going to display this again as flex. We're going to align the items to the center now, which is basically align all of this to the center. And now I can give them a bit of a padding. So padding of 0.6 rem and 1 rem left and right. Okay, now let's take care of the icon. And this is why I gave it a specific class, because when I style one of these icons, all of the other icons, basically all of these icons will have the same class. So let's grab onto the class of con icon. You can obviously rename them if you wish so. First of all, if I move over them, I want to have a cursor of pointers, so it will indicate that I'm over one of these icons. Then I'm going to give it a margin to the right of 1 rem. Give me more space here. And now I'm going to give the icon itself a background color with a hexadecimal number of 9B, 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 and a 81 at the end. Now let's change the color of the icon itself to a dark color, so hash 333. Whoa, what am I doing? 333. Then in order for the background to pop out, we're going to give it a padding, so an all-around padding of 0.4 rem. And let's also trim down the edges by giving it a border radius of 50%. Now, because later on we're going to change the background and also its color, and this is not happening instantaneously, you see it has a bit of a delay. We're actually using a transition effect again, so I'm going to use our transition all 3 seconds and ease. We can't see this effect right now, we can only see it later on when we're going to have that switch event using JavaScript. Now, last thing, whenever you have a header element like our H6 here, it does have a bit of automatic margin. I'm going to take it out by targeting it and telling it that you should have a margin of 0. As you can see, it was pushed down a bit. Now you're probably wondering why our connectivity isn't spanning two rows. And this is because we still need to, let me just inspect this. It does actually span 2 rows, but it has a grid template row of auto, and this means it's going to automatically take up, well, just the necessary space. So as soon as we start populating this, the other 2 grid elements, then it's going to take up more space. Okay, so now we have our very first connectivity done. We can now move on and create a second one. So I'm going to grab onto the section container and copy it 2 more times. And I'm just going to start replacing a couple of icons. For example, the next one is going to be Bluetooth. Bluetooth. Let's hit save. So there's a whoa. Oh, because this should be an FA, but this should be FAB, not a FAS. This is not going to have the active, actually none of them is going to have the active tag except in the very first one. Then let's also change the title here to Bluetooth. We don't need a small tag, just need Bluetooth. The last one is going to be airdrop. And let's type in here within the small tag contact display. Let's also change the icon to satellite and dish. And there we go, we have all of them now. Okay, now we can actually move on to our next one, which is going to be night mode. So let's go underneath our section tag. So right underneath it here, let's also type in your comment, night mode. And let's create another section tag, which is going to have the class of night mode. So night-mode is going to include a section container again. So sec container. And as soon as whoa, there should be a class. Sorry, I forgot the dot here. Section container. And as soon as I do this, we have our section container tab up here. Within our section container, we're going to create our icon tag with the FAS class and the FA-moon and another class of icon. Okay, after icon, I'm going to create another div, the class of type, type, which is going to include our h6, our title, with the text of do not disturb. Hit enter and I misspelled disturb. Disturb. Okay. Now let's head into CSS and let's start styling it. Accepting the fact that we need to give it a grid area. So let's go underneath h6 here. Let's grab onto the night mode class and let's set this grid area to night mode. Okay, now we can grab onto this and go up in our grid template areas and place it in 2 times, one after another, and there we go. Is now going to take up 2 spaces. Actually, I can close this, and close this, so we just have these 2 open. Okay, and that's basically it for do not disturb. Next up, we have a keyboard widget. Now let's go back to our HTML. Let's type in here another comment, keyboard. Again, we're going to create a section with a class of keyboard, which is going to include another class of section container, sec container. This one is going to include a icon tag with a class of FAS, then FA, then keyboard, and icon. Now I'm going to use plus a div with a class of con type dash type, which is going to include a h6 with the text of keyboard and brightness. Okay, let's hit enter, and there we go. Now this was pretty quick, wasn't it? Hamid is just amazing as always. Okay, now let's go to CSS. Go underneath of night mode, let's select our keyboard class, and let's assign it a grid area of keyboard. Let's hit save. Let's go up to grid template areas, and only for our first dot we're going to replace it with keyboard. Oh, and we need to display this as flex actually. Let's go down. We can now target our keyboard. Within our keyboard, I'm going to target the section container class, so only within the keyboard, okay? And we're going to flex, change the flex direction to a column this time. Okay, so now they're displayed as a column, and we can now use justified content as space between. It's going to create space between the elements, so it's going to push the icon to the top and the text to the bottom. And we could also do a text align to the center, and there we go. It's basically centered now. Okay, so that's it for keyboard. Next up is going to be AirPlay. So this widget right here. Well, we don't have to do much here. We're just going to copy this, paste it in, change this, change the comment to AirPlay, and also the class to AirPlay. So AirPlay. Now for the icon, I'm going to replace the FA keyboard with the FA TV. And let's change the text here to AirPlay, and also the brightness to display. AirPlay display. There we go. There's a widget up here. Now let's go back to CSS. Again, we need to assign it a grid area. AirPlay, and we're going to give this the grid area of AirPlay. Now let's place it within our grid areas, and we're going to place it right to the right side of the keyboard. Sorry, I misspelled that. Okay, so there it is. Now let's do exactly the same thing as we did for our keyboard. So again, we're going to select the section. So we can do something like, I'm going to take this, copy it. I'm going to type in here comma, then dot again, section container, and there we go. It's doing the same thing for both of these classes. So I think this was pretty easy and pretty straightforward. So we have this part done. So let's take a look in our container here. Next up is this display with, well, the range slider. So let's go back to our HTML, and now we're going to take care of our display widget. Let's go underneath the section, type in here comment, display, create our next section, which is going to have the class of display this time. Now we're going to use a section container class again. Within it, we're going to create our con type, which is going to include an A6 with the text of display. I'm just going to S there, plus a icon tag with a class of FAS, then FA, there's sun, and con icon, and hit enter. Okay, so there we go, there's our display. Now right underneath our icon, we need an input tag with a type, two dots, of range. And we don't need a name, we don't need an ID, but what we do need is a class of slider. Okay, now let's go to our CSS because this is a bit different. After the class of AirPlay, we're going to grab onto the class of display. We're going to assign it the grid area of display. I'm going to pack it up here. So I'm going to create another quotations and paste in with space between them display 4 times. This is going to span over all 4 columns now. Now let's go back to our display class and select within it the section container. So the class of section container, and we're going to give this a width of 100%. Next, within this, I'm going to select, so within the display class and within the section container, we're going to select the con type class. Sorry about that, my girl is making a lot of noise. And we're going to position it relative. Now we need to position this relative because I want to position our icon later on absolute. Okay, now again within this class, so the class of display, within the section container, and within the con type, we're going to target our input tag with the class of slide, and we're going to give it a margin from the top of 1 rem, so we're going to push it down a bit. And now I'm going to use a WebKit on it, because in order to get rid of this, we need to use a special WebKit. So, WebKit. I'm going to use the WebKit of appearance. I'm going to display this as none. And as soon as I do this, boom. The line is gone and we're just going to have this rectangle. Now I want our input tag to span throughout the width of its entire container, so I'm just going to give it a width of 100%. So increase its height to 30 pixels. Changes border radius to 15 pixels. Set the outlines to none. And give it a transition to its opacity of 0.3 seconds. Okay, so there we go. We have our little slider here. Now the next step is to move this icon down here. For this, we're going to target the icon tag, but only the icon tag within this class. We're going to position it absolute. Then we're going to push it from the top down 2.2 rem. And we're going to change its background color to, well, either inherit or transparent, whatever you wish. I'm going to go with inherit. Basically, it's going to inherit whatever background color it's underneath its parent container has. So we're basically done with this. Next up is the soundbar. For this, let's go back to our HTML. And the soundbar is pretty similar to this one, so I'm just going to the display one. I'm just going to copy it, change the comment and the titles to sound. I'm going to change this to a capital S. I'm also going to change the icon to a volume and up. And the rest of them I'm going to leave as it is, but you should be a P here, sound up. And there we go. Okay, now let's move back to our CSS. Let's grab onto the sound class. And let's give it the grid area of sound. And basically I'm just going to grab onto it and place it. Actually, we could just copy this. We don't need this. Select all 4 of them using Command D or Control D on a PC, Command D is on a Mac, Command D on a PC, and let's replace this with sound. And there we go, we have our sound down here. Now in order to style it to have exactly the same style as the display has, we're going to use a little trick. Well, not a trick, but actually it has exactly the same settings as the display. So I'm going to copy this, type in here comma, and change this to sound. Okay, next one. Oh man, my girl is having really fun out there. I'm going to change this to sound. Then the next one, let's copy it, type in a comma, sound, the next one, comma, and sound. And there we go, we're done with our sound widget. Now very last widget will be the media player or the music player. So let's go back to our HTML and let's create, type in here comment, let's call it player. Player, what's up player? What's up? Let's create another section again with the class of play. I'm just going to scroll up a bit. Within this, we're going to include our div of section container. Within our section container, we're going to have our image tag. I'm just going to copy this in. You can download it obviously from the link in the description below. We're just going to copy, but I'm going to copy the entire folder. So after we have our image, we can now create our con type, class con type. Within the con type, we're going to include our h6, which is going to be the title of song name. Now my daughter is really throwing a party out there. I'm sorry if you can hear her, but I can't do anything. I'm recording right now. And then we're going to create a small tag. And this is going to include the text of new album. Okay. After our con type, I'm going to create another div, which is going to have a class of buttons. And this is just going to include two icon tags. So icon, how should I do this? I think I'm going to do is the icon with the FAS, FA, play, then con icon. I'm going to multiply this times 2. And then just change the second icon to forward. Okay, let's hit save. And hey, where are you? Something just happened to my server. Okay, the image is messing up everything as always. No problems. We're going to now go to our CSS, grab onto our play class, and let's just take care of the image first of all. So img within the play class, we're going to set the width of it to 80 pixels. Set the margin to the right. Let's push it a bit to the left side of 1 rem. And I'm going to change the border radius of the image. And I'm just going to give it 3 pixels to all of its edges. This should be enough. Okay, now let's grab onto the play class again. And again, we need to assign it. So I'm going to give it a grid area of play. Let's go up to our grid areas and let's take up the last row, but take up also all of the columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so the same thing as we did up here. Now let's go back down again. And next up, let's take care of the section container. Dot section sec container, and within it, I'm going to display, first of all, everything as flex. Display flex. After that, we're going to take our class of play, and within it the class of buttons. We're going to position them relative. And now we can push them from the left with 150 pixels. This will just move them to the right side. Okay, so we're basically done with our tabs. All we need to do now is make our buttons do something. For this, we're going to go to JavaScript. Oh, but first I need a class. I need a class of active. And actually, let's go down here. So we're going to create a class of active icon. I have it with underscores. Active icon. Now let me also take a look here. You should be with an underscore. Okay, so please change this. You know what? I'm going to leave it as we had it before. Not to create any kind of confusion. It doesn't matter. So active icon. Oh yes, it does, because I can use query select on it. Okay, so I need to change it. Sorry about that. Active icon, and back in our HTML, active icon. Okay, so what will this class do? We're just going to change the icons a bit, and we're going to change their background color to a hash of 0D6EFD, the bluish color. Then the color of the icon themselves, we're going to have a DDD, and we're going to have a transition of all 0.3 seconds and ease. Okay, now let's go ahead and go to our JavaScript. Within here, again, I'm going to grab from the document using query selector all to all of the icons. So I'm going to grab onto the class of con icon. Now for each of these classes, we're going to loop over them. We're going to grab onto each icon, and each icon is going to have an on-click event on it. So on click, and when we're clicking on them, we're going to grab onto the event itself. Then when we have the event, we're going to target it. So the event that was targeted, target, we're going to grab onto its class list, and we're going to toggle the class of active underscore icon. Okay, so with this being done, if I click on an icon, then it's going to toggle on and off the class of active icon, which is basically adding the blue background color and the white color. Okay, so that's it. Oh, wait, we forgot something. We need to display this now as none. So you're gone. And that's basically it for the project. So hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, thumbs up. If you didn't, thumbs down. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed to it, and click that notification bell in order to get notified whenever I post new videos like this. Also, if you have any kind of questions or suggestions, as always, leave them in the comment section below. I'm going to get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, with this being said, catch you next time. Bye-bye.